My name is Shlok, and I'm joined by my co-host Arman. And this is Topical Idiocy, where we discuss topics we are unqualified to tackle. Now,
Today we're going to be talking about our reactions more to the format and structure of the Democratic debates. We want to focus less on the actual policies and our different positions, which we outlined in a different episode. But we still think at least how the how the policies were discussed and the different candidates are just as interesting as the candidates we were given. So with that in mind, Shlok, what are we talking about?
well, first, I just want to make sure that anyone that listens to this should know that Arman is terrible at interrupting me for intros and everything. So that was pretty good. We're getting better at this. But I think we should first talk about, I guess when it comes to the Democratic debates, I don't know, there were so many that it's almost hard to keep track, but I think we should talk about generally the format of each debate. I think that's a good place to start.
Mhm.
And I guess the most obvious place to start would be something that's been a mainstay of debates, but because of the coronavirus, kind of went away for just one. And it made me appreciate it made me appreciate that debate way more, which was the choice on whether to have an audience or not. And this isn't, I don't really want to format this as like a debate between you and me. But I I generally think that having an audience for a debate dampens the informative effect of whatever you're going to be able to get, right? Where because the politicians are by nature people pleasers, they're trying to pander to these audience members and they're trying to get as many applause lines out as possible. And that's not really that informative, right? So, I mean, that's what I think. What do
Mhm.
you think?
Well, I think what I keep on remembering back to when we talk about audience I believe in South Carolina, the debate in which literally not the moderates, my bad, the audience members booted every single decently left thing proposed by Democrats. Bernie Sanders addressed the crowd and pretty much shot them down, which I thought was hilarious. But
Well, wait, so clarify this. They booed at every single decent. So
progressive,
you're,
left leaning.
wait, so they had like a right winged audience for a Democratic debate?
What I mean is, so mhm. Let's consider sure Joe Biden to be the center of the Democratic Party,
Yeah, yes.
or at least where he is now. But
He's
anyways,
like more the right of the Democratic Party, but sure. Yeah, yeah. He's the
yeah, he's still
centrist.
in flux. But
Yeah. Joe Biden
anything
doesn't know what Joe
similar
Biden
to
is. Sorry. Yeah,
different
yeah.
episode, anything similar to even approaching what like Elizabeth Warren and the more progressive wing of the party said was booed down and
Hmm.
admonished. I think really it just goes to show how, as you said, audiences change the focus of the debates more to
Absolutely.
seeming like politicians have support over
Absolutely.
ideas
Yeah.
rather than actually having support. And I think one of the biggest things, like I think we should answer just in terms of since we're talking about debates, what is the best point of a debate? What would you say a debate has to fundamentally answer?
Mm, yeah, that's a good question. I guess, I mean, I'm generally less interested in, I don't know. I mean, like, I feel like the Democratic Party is a little biased towards identity politics, and we talk about this all the time, where it's more of like representation is very important, but sometimes it feels like they favor that more than actual solutions. So that's why you can elect a, president like Obama and then afterwards think like, but wait, what did he do? And so I mean, I don't know. I guess the focus of a debate really should be to inform an audience, right? And it should be
Mm-hmm.
to inform the people watching on like what do these politicians actually stand for each position.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I mean, frankly, you should be able to also like Google that, you know? So I
But even then,
guess
it's still hard to do so. Like I
it's
think
still, yeah,
what the ability moderators have in a debate is to hold candidates accountable to a fixed
yeah, that's
position.
true. That
You
is
can't
true.
have the whole like and even this is what frustrated me a bit, but with for example with the uh Kamala Harris moment about busing.
Yeah, which was again, so we've talked about it before, but it was such a terrible, I don't know, it wasn't a terrible moment, but it was just a very,
Manufactured.
manufactured and sensationalist kind of moment.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because it appealed to the audience who was quite frankly I don't think any audience member in a debate who is lucky enough to be able to afford tickets or be given tickets doesn't have their mind already made. So I think no matter what, they're just there to cheer on their own candidate. Whereas the viewers at
Oh,
home who
yeah.
can't pay
Yeah.
the outrageous fees, they're the ones whose mind is trying to be convinced. And
Oh
so
my
when we have
God.
some,
Wait, I've never thought about that. Wait a second. Okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I've never thought about the fact that it actually, this is stupid. Sorry. I've never thought about the fact that it costs money
it
to
costs thousands of dollars to get in, or
thousands
you
of
have to
dollars. Wait,
know
wait,
the
wait.
right people.
Oh, geez.
That was the case with the
Yeah.
South Carolina debates.
No, that makes so much sense too. Wow. Then debate audiences shouldn't exist at all, right? Because like the point is that if the point is, and I agree with it totally, if the point is that you're trying to hold a politician accountable to whatever they're saying, then it would really help not to hear them getting cheered on whenever they're trying to get out of whatever trap that they're being led into. Like,
Mhm.
oh man, that's so crazy. Wow. Yeah. No, because then that also furthers the I don't want to draw too much of a I don't want to jump too much, but that draws I mean that furthers like the sort of fiscal divide between candidates as well, right? Like
Mhm.
if a candidate
Like
has
who
a
their
lot of
base is.
funding, yeah,
Yeah.
if their base is very rich, then they're going to get a lot of advertisers, but
Mhm.
also they're going to get a lot of supporters at these debates.
I do believe that, and again, I don't know the fixed rules on it, but each of the campaigns can allocate like have a certain number of seats allocated that they can allocate as they see fit.
Okay,
Um,
good.
so I think that's interesting. But again, it goes down to
I don't
audience
know. Then
members don't ask questions. What differs from a town hall versus an audience? Town hall members actually have a purpose for being there,
yeah, 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 for
whereas
sure. Town
audience
halls,
members don't.
and we've talked about this before. This is slightly veering off, but do you think town halls are more useful than debates? Or I mean, also they could just both exist, but I don't love the
I
way
think it's
debates are
fundamentally
formatted now.
important for both to exist,
Sure, 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 sure.
and I think the whole what pains me is that the best example of a town hall, what to the stand out in my mind, the Bernie Sanders one on Fox and the Pete Buttigieg one with CNN. Pete Buttigieg gave a very sensational answer. By all means, I think it was a genius answer, but I don't think it really helped us learn more about
You're
what the
talking about his
candidate stood
God
for.
one?
Yes, with his both his uh, invoking like his idea of bringing religion back to the Democratic Party and making it
Yeah,
more of a message, and
yeah,
also his response to Mike Pence, like coming from Mike Pence and
yeah.
Mike Pence's state of Indiana, um, and Mike Pence, of course, had made homophobic comments. Um,
Homophobic comments and legislation, but yeah,
yes,
yes.
so I think like with the Bernie Sanders one, oh yes, a lot of it was manufactured. A lot of his audience was able to come in because they had it open, and I think that was hilarious when uh, like when the moderators asked how many people would
Oh,
love
this
to
was
have.
Brett Baer. Yeah, I remember this. This
Yes,
is the
this
Fox
is
News
when they
thing. Yeah,
this is when they asked about how many people would mind switching from private to public healthcare system with a Medicare for all plan, and almost the entire audience did. Um, but I still don't think that's productive. First of all, the
no, absolutely.
moderators were like
The
whatever,
moderators
but
were
that's
a
still a
little fence
manufactured
for me at
moment.
that point. Yeah, yeah. I don't know. I mean, I guess, and I think we've talked about. I'm not sure if we've talked about this on this medium itself, but I think I really like. I mean, I really like Joe Rogan's podcast interviews with politicians. I really like when you get to have, and he only did. I think he only did with Andrew Yang, who's my he's my like political BFF, and
He did one
and
with Bernie
Tulsi Gabbard.
Sanders.
Oh yes, and Bernie Sanders, and I think he did one with Tulsi Gabbard. I'm not sure. I didn't watch it. At least I
Mhm.
like, but the ones that I did watch, at least they were so I don't know, they were so informative, and then because they were so slow paced and they were more measured, it just felt like you got to know the candidate a little more.
Mhm.
And yeah, the candidate was still making their case. Like Bernie, I think part of it was just like he was tired and also he's old, so he's kind of like reduced his message to a bunch of talking points. But when he was talking to Joe Rogan, at least you realized that, like, oh, you have a reason for believing this stuff. So he was
Mhm.
bringing it out bit by bit, and he was talking to Joe. He was getting this out, and it's way more productive of a form of like actually understanding a politician. Now, I don't know if it's possible for this to happen in the future. I would rather having like podcast interviews of politicians, having that happen. But like the core of why I liked the Joe Rogan interviews was not even because of Joe Rogan, although like having a guy that's not completely politically minded, but more of a like sort of blank face that can just get explained to helps
Mhm.
because he's like an
No, yeah,
audience stand-in.
absolutely.
But the fact that like it's very slow, there isn't a lot of conflict, and it's more about what the politicians think
Mhm.
rather than what the politicians want you to feel makes all the difference in the world, right? Like when Andrew Yang's explaining why he thinks UBI matters and why stimulus is needed for this economy, that is way more effective than if he were to say like, and the American people feel bad and we're going to make them feel good, because it's like that's not saying anything. So
Mhm.
yeah.
When there's such a competition, not only for how long you can speak, but who even gets to speak,
Yes.
that doesn't lead itself to productive conversation.
Not at all.
And I
Yeah.
think one of my favorite moments of Andrew Yang at the debates was after the debate when he was being interviewed one on one with CNN. I think Anderson Cooper was interviewing him. It was someone from CNN, and I think he had the time to go into his policies. He had the time to explain himself, and it felt relaxed rather than the sort of confrontational, quite
Actually, yeah,
honestly, divisive
relaxed.
approach.
Yeah.
Because
There's no
everyone's saying that
reason why this should be divisive. I mean, like, there's no,
exactly.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Sorry. It's just that there's no reason for, the thing is that, like, I know that by implicit nature, like, a political debate should be, attacking, full of attacks and full of conflict and full of division. But there's no reason that the tone should be that way. And there's no reason
Hmm.
that, like, the moderator should sort of encourage that. It's
Hmm.
like it's for ratings, right? It should be relaxing. It should be like, what does this guy really think? You know, they should have tea. Sorry.
No, but I think ultimately what you're going like to, boiling all this down to is that who control like yes, the DNC can set rules of the debate, and yes, media needs the DNC more than the DNC needs the media, but ultimately both are trying to get as big of an exposure as possible. Like, of course, you want more people to watch the debates if you are the DNC. Of course, you want people to watch the debates if you're CNN.
Absolutely.
Do you necessarily care how much people get out of it? Quite
No,
honestly, no.
no, you don't. You kind of, if you're the DNC, and this is my cynical side showing, I feel like you thrive on an uneducated voter because the educated voters would probably think for themselves, you know? I don't know. I mean, that's a separate topic. But yeah,
Mhm.
I mean,
No, and that's fair.
I think we both generally agree that the audience is not a great addition to what a debate could be, especially to what like
Mhm.
its kind of format is. I don't know. What do you think about else in the structure of a debate, of the debates?
I liked. I didn't live through I didn't watch the 2016 um, debates on either the Republican or Democratic side. I didn't watch the 2012 one. I watched like highlights of like the 80s one, but like that's it.
As like the Ronald Reagan ones?
Yes,
Have you
yes,
seen the like I am paying for this microphone?
yes.
It's a
It's
great moment. It's fun.
but it also gets into that sensation.
I
Regardless,
mean, yeah,
regardless,
John
regardless.
F. Kennedy was the first television debate guy, right? I mean, this is kind of
Yeah.
veering off of it, but like the reason why I bring this up is that like ever since television, I mean, we've always wanted photogenic people as our president, but since television came on, that like need kind of went even further, where John F. Kennedy and like Ronald, or not Ronald Reagan, Richard Nixon are both debating each other. And you can see that, like, John F. Kennedy looks really calm, Richard Nixon looks really nervous. And you can't help but wonder that, like, looking back, that had to influence the people as well. And so
No, and
television really shifted
yeah.
the from just like what the message is to like how do they look when they're delivering that message.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And I think that's also just so much of it is appearance, and so much of it
Mhm.
is actually what you want to project and how much that projection works.
Yeah, absolutely.
What we like consistently for Andrew Yang, for instance, and Tulsi Gabbard too, people I would say who are probably the most substantive and focused on policy besides Jay Inslee, I would argue,
And Warren, Elizabeth Warren,
and Elizabeth Warren. True.
and Bernie Sanders. Yeah, but yeah, for sure.
They got the least amount of speaking time.
Absolutely. They did.
And like Andrew Yang was asked, I think like just going into the moderator's role in this, their priority of informing stances on holding politicians accountable, their priority was not, um,
It was not providing an equal playing ground at all,
yeah,
or a level playing field. I messed up that saying. That was weird. Yeah, at all. And that's infuriating. I mean, a lot of his base, I was part of his base. I feel like I'm still sometimes part of his base, but that was pretty infuriating. It felt at times it felt racist almost, and at times it
weirdly
felt
so, yeah. Um,
yeah, and at time it felt like just like dismissive and
mhm,
so weird because you have 10 politicians saying the exact same thing and you're like, but what do you think? Oh, the same thing? And then Andrew Yang is saying something different and you don't give him the time of day.
mhm,
So it felt
exactly.
it felt disturbing.
The There was a really interesting moment from this campaign where they said the that Fox News treated them better than MSNBC. And remember, MSNBC showed wrong infographics of Andrew Yang.
Mhm.
They
Oh my
completely ignored
God.
him in some
Show
infographics.
the wrong like the
Asian
wrong
guy,
picture of, yeah, the wrong Asian guy. They
and then
called
they
him
named him
John
John
Yang.
Yang.
Yes.
Jinx. But
Yeah.
this is supposed to be the progressive identity politics.
Racist. Absolutely racist. That's what that is. Oh my God. Would like if they did that for any other race, there would have not. It wouldn't have been no question. It would have been no question.
Yeah.
That would have been insane. Like you could not have imagined MSNBC even finding like an audience after that happened because that is downright racist. That's what that is.
Mhm.
Oh, it's
We
terrible.
could go into, I guess, I think that's also a good, interesting topic for a future episode, just like the accountability of the media. But
Absolutely.
um,
Yeah.
returning back to topic, I think one of the biggest role of the moderators should be is to differentiate the candidates. By
Yeah.
that, I don't mean, and it's a balanced thread. You don't want to create divisiveness, and you don't want to create people shouting over each other, but you want
No,
to
but you
show
can do
this
that
person is
without
different
having
from
to.
this person. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. You can do that without having to say that, like, you two are different, now fight. It can just be you two are
Mhm.
different. Why are you right? Or why are you right? You don't
Mhm.
have to, no.
And I think what's interesting, this is just a weird idea I'm having right now. Why were there such different camps between Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders?
Hmm.
Part of me thinks it's because how the media contrasted the two, like from each other. Whereas among the moderates, could you genuinely tell me a difference between Amy Klobuchar and Joe Biden?
One knows where he is and one doesn't. But besides that, sure.
I think
Sure, you cannot. Yeah,
the moderator's role should be to differentiate the candidates. I
absolutely.
cannot tell you
Yeah.
a single difference between Joe Biden and Amy Klobuchar. That's bad.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I
And
agree totally. Yeah, there was no informative, like there was no desire to gain information about any of these candidates, any of the moderate candidates at least. Pete Buttigieg versus Joe Biden, I'm still kind of confused. I know he had the Frederick Douglass plan, but that only came out when it was found out that he did a really terrible job at solving police accountability in his own town.
yeah.
So it
Hmm.
felt really reactive and fake. I also don't like
But
Pete Buttigieg, but
but Pete Buttigieg, I could say his focus on um, even just like the Supreme Court example. Yes, it wasn't his original idea, but his idea of packing the Supreme Court more, well, not packing, but expanding the number of seats of the Supreme Court such that each nomination wasn't as contested and divisive and partisan, which I think is a pretty interesting idea. Um, but even that,
yeah,
that's a difference I could highlight, and that's because he talked about it in the debates and on
yeah,
his
that's
town hall.
true. Although honestly, you had brought up that difference to me way before the debates had even started.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
If you don't remember, like we were just talking about these candidates, and you had brought up this because I was getting very ranty about how Andrew Yang was the only one with new ideas, and you were like, "No, Pete Buttigieg has this," and this was like
This
this
was
was like a
in
solid. This was like
almost
December
a year
or
ago, over a
something.
year ago. Yes.
Yeah.
December
So
of
you,
2018.
yeah. So this was literally like, yeah. This was Pete Buttigieg being interviewed and him telling these ideas to journalists and then getting
Hmm.
that published. That was more efficient of a process than him on a debate arguing this out because I don't think that came out as well because it doesn't get highlighted, Because
Hmm.
like I can't imagine CNN, you like publishing a YouTube clip titled like, Buttigieg unveils new plan to like stack Supreme Court. It doesn't play as
Well, I
well.
think in that in that like kind of clickbaity language, yes, but
You know,
um,
yeah. I don't know. So I think maybe I guess okay, so I know we're talking about the debates, but I feel like this kind of weird existential thing about the debates themselves where I've always felt when watching debates of these politicians, like, is this the best way to evaluate these candidates, for the job that they're like interviewing for, basically? Is this the best format? Because sometimes I don't know. What I'm trying to get at is like the what makes a good debater is someone that can, think well on their feet and play to the crowd, right? And it's
mhm.
more like a showman aspect of it, right? You have to be like a great showman or showwoman or whatever. I don't know why I did that, but that's what you have to do. Now, does that translate one to one to the skills of being a president? I'm not so sure. You know, presidents have speechwriters. They generally don't have to
No,
think immediately on their feet.
that's
Presidents
fair.
don't, you don't see a president like talking with a prime minister and then dissing them on the same stage, aside from our current president, but that's not a thing that you want to be able to do. So I don't know. I feel like sometimes the debates also just show a different metric. And sometimes in news stories, you get the idea of like, these candidates admit that what makes a good debater does not make a good politician. And sometimes they have to learn different
Hmm.
skills. That shouldn't be the
Oh, definitely.
case, right? There should be a better way to like evaluate a presidential candidate that's more of like a one-to-one skill set. Do
Hmm.
you get what I mean?
Yeah, and so what I would think, my thinking, just seeking to answer that question, is analyzing their policy ideas.
Hmm.
And well, you could say that, oh, did Joe Biden really think through every detail of his um, plan for climate change? No, but
Yeah.
his team did. And most often his team will be writing, or at least having a
All of his
deep,
policy.
heavy
Yeah,
hand.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. For sure.
Um, and of course, like his inner circle, his like chief of staff, his policy directors, they'll be made up of people from the campaign. Um, so I think that's a decent metric. And what we saw, for example, with the, I believe it's the Sunset Movement. It's one of these organizations that focuses on climate change, and they evaluated each of the candidates' uh, climate change proposals. And they gave Joe Biden an extremely bad ranking, saying that here's why it failed, here's why it didn't address the fundamental and existential crises of climate change. And then they gave, I think, Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders probably the highest marks. I think Bernie Sanders slightly beat her, but like, anyways. What I mean to say with that is that so many Democrats said essentially said to the Sunset Movement or Sunrise Movement, I forget which one it is. um, why are you hurting Joe Biden when he's fighting against Trump, who has done nothing, and if anything, made climate change even worse? Isn't something better than nothing? I don't think the Democratic Party, and this might sound condescending and elitist, but I don't think we're quite at that stage as an electorate to be making decisions based on facts and opinions, rather than what I think for the most part we're
As in,
basing
we don't
our
have the
choices on.
required sophistication. That's what you're saying.
I don't think we focus on that
When we do
as
not. No, we don't. Yeah, we don't at
yeah.
all. No, that's terrible. I mean, I don't think Republicans do either, but
Well, this is just the political culture of the U.S. It's
which is,
it's
yeah,
always been divisive, and it's always been like,
yeah, it's really disappointing. I mean, there
look at
needs to be
me, I'm
some sort of
fighting against
disruptive
you.
way. I guess maybe, I don't know. You know how like the Rotten Tomatoes works well for movies because they
Oh
numerically
my god.
evaluate movies? I'm just saying that like Rotten Tomatoes for politicians might not be the worst thing. It
Well,
would
I think
provide some sort of
break it
clarity.
down definitely into each of the different.
Yeah,
Um,
vote or no vote, you know?
yeah,
Is that a
and
I'm gonna hold on to that. That sounds interesting. Whatever. Don't, yeah. Anyway, but yeah, no, you're right. And I think it's weird that we don't even talk about the actual valuations of the proposals of most politicians that are there. I think we should find a better way to evaluate these politicians because ultimately what the debates are, they're job interviews, right?
yeah, which
It's
I love the way you
basically,
phrase that.
right? Like we're almost like the boss, right? With the American electorate, and we're saying that are you qualified enough to lead us? Can you do this? And I don't think the job interview itself is formatted well. I think it's formatted, it's biased at least towards sensationalism, and it's biased towards, you know, can this person say the most amount of things to make me feel good? Can this person look the best in this suit? Can this person wear a tie? Which again, I'm a very big Andrew Yang supporter. What the heck? This man was saying so many good things. And then afterwards, you got Anderson Cooper going like, "Oh, but he didn't wear a tie." Like, shut up, Cooper. My God. Uh, yeah,
We should definitely dissect the media as well on this, and just the different factors in play of this.
absolutely. And I mean, I don't know. I feel like it wouldn't be a great episode of this podcast if we didn't propose our own sort of solution to this.
Hmm.
I personally think that we went a step in the right direction. And this is one of the only slightly positive things to come out of this pandemic. And I say that in a very guarded way because this is a very terrible thing. But because of the coronavirus, Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders were made to debate each other 6 feet away from each other with no audience, right?
Hmm.
And that was perfect because there was no one for them to pander to, their instinct had to shift from, saying whatever would get a good line or whatever get a good reaction to just saying what they could.
Hmm.
I think that's good. I think that's a step in the right direction.
Personally, I would
Yeah.
love to see a sort of round robin uh, style in which it's one on one, because the best debate, just to see the sort of like ideological poles of the Democratic Party and what this whole primary was trying to solve, like the whole existential crisis of the Democratic Party, like where is it sold, was in those last debates when it was Biden and Bernie.
Yeah. 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 Absolutely. I have a
And I
question
think
for you. Oh, sorry. No, no, go
no,
ahead.
go
Go
ahead,
ahead.
go ahead, go ahead.
No, no, my question is just because we were talking about this right before the podcast had started, the where like the two nights with like the 12 candidates each at the beginning got a
Was
little
it
bit
12?
tired. It could have been
Something
like
like that.
70. Actually, let me clarify. The first debate site where it was like 50 nights and 70,000 candidates each and whatever. I think my mom was running for like everyone was running for president at that time. Like, do you think there was a better way to format this? Because that's bound to happen again in the future. So
No
what do we
doubt.
do? What do we do then? Because this was exhausting. It was, and I'm gonna make
Yeah,
my joke because you got the T Rex
the T-Rex is de
harassed.
Blasio.
Yeah, you got De Blasio harassing Joe Biden just about like his record, which is good. I mean, like that was good. That kind of conflict was, I think, beneficial because it was a politician making a policy attack on another politician saying you've been
Mhm.
inconsistent.
So
But
consider it this way: if the
yeah,
moderators fail to hold politicians accountable and distinguish the stances of the candidates, then it's the candidate's responsibility to do so. And that's what we saw with Tulsi Gabbard. We saw that with Bernie Sanders. We saw that
oh
even
my
with
God,
like
yes,
Hickenlooper. Even with
yes,
Hickenlooper, he
I
had
love
a clear
Hickenlooper.
distinction.
Oh, yeah, so sad Hickenlooper.
Uh,
Yeah.
go maybe not, but what I mean to say is that having those
Yeah,
smaller groups. Yes, I
yeah.
know there was 27 candidates running,
Mhm.
something like that. Yes, there were governors. Yes, there were businessmen.
Yeah. So what do you do? Like, how do you
I
get that to
still
happen?
really would love to have the smaller, even 3 people, or even 2 people
I like
for
that
like
idea. Like three
the.
person debates are not bad at all.
Mhm.
Like that kind of thing. So then you'd have 9 debate nights though, because I feel like that might be
And
too
that's
much.
you could even have it for 30 minutes or 45 minutes or an hour.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Just cut the time down more. And I feel like yes, that does an injustice to debate, but at that point,
No, it
no
doesn't
one's
do an
early.
injustice because these people had like five. Sorry. I'm just trying to understand because I think what could happen, right, is like you have a 3 person debate that's an hour, but it's 3 people talking amongst themselves with a moderator,
Mhm,
right? And so it becomes less of like you have a minute to answer this, a minute to answer this,
mhm,
but more of like each politician would basically get about like 20 minutes, right? Which is,
mhm.
I think, more than what a politician normally would get in debate.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, by far. I think the
And
highest was like
then
19 minutes for a debate.
and then because it's an hour, you can fit in 3 hours in a night, get out nine. And so
Mhm.
it's a 3 day thing, which is still not great. And I'm sure
But I
we're not
still
going to
think
solve. Yeah,
the effects of that could be just a more engaged population,
absolutely. Because
especially
I
if the
mean,
debates are fresh and vigorous without
yeah.
being a shouting match.
I also feel like when you have 3 candidates that are not trying to shout over each other, the debates can also be shorter and more informative
Yeah.
because it suddenly becomes more just about getting your message out there and talking to a person.
Mhm.
So, yeah. And I
I
mean,
think also,
people always panic about like right now, at least around this time, you always hear older people say, like, oh, young people have no attention span. But I mean, I don't know. I feel like people listen to hour-long podcasts and everything and all of
people
that.
have
So
gotten this far in the podcast.
maybe let's not assume anything. But I think it's just it's just the sense of I feel like that would actually be pretty successful. I get really irritated whenever I see politicians talking over each other. So this
Mhm,
would have been better. Yeah.
mhm. No, I think that's good. I think that's a nice note to leave it on.
Yeah, I
Um,
agree. I agree. This was definitely a way shorter episode, and I think we're gonna do Armand and I are like right now messing around with the format of what this podcast could be. We're trying to figure out what it could be. We don't want to do, like daily, week to week, humor and politics and anything. So we're going to do something a little bit different for the next episode, right? And then we're just going to see where we are. Is that
mhm.
true? Yeah.
Yes.
Awesome. All right, great. So thanks for listening, and see you, or I don't know, we'll talk to you next time, I guess.
Yeah, we'll talk to you next time. We'll figure it out.
Yeah, we'll figure out the ending.